So again, welcome everyone. My name is Morgan Ellis, and welcome to breakout room number 2, where we will be discussing deliberate hiring and retention practices, strategies, and policies focused on women for a company's workforce. My name is Morgan Ellis. I'm the VP of Sustainable Transportation here at IETS America, and it is an absolute pleasure to be moderating this breakout group. Let me do a little bit of goal setting and let you know what's going to happen and a few introductions. So first, the goal of our breakout room is really conversation, dialogue, brainstorming, and engagement. We're going to be hearing from Janet in just a second, but we really want that conversation, questions filling the chat box, that dialogue time, that's what's really going to drive this forward. And the engagement and those conversations that happen are really going to be driven by everyone in this group. So I'm super excited. And, that's some of the goals here. We're going to learn, we're going to talk, we're going to discuss. And at the end, Elizabeth and I will be, distilling some of the top 3 points, and then we'll be reporting those back out to the larger group. But again, let me do some introductions. First, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our presenter and speaker, Janet Walker-Ford. As mentioned before, Janet works at WSP as the Transit and Rail National Market Leader. So what's remarkable about this, she's not only responsible for growing business and relationship and establishing strategies for rail and transit, but she's also a leader in the space on hiring, retention, and the promotion of women. Janet's going to introduce her experience on this work, share some best practices with us to help start the conversation. And then lastly, I'd like to introduce my fellow ITS colleague, Elizabeth Johnson. Elizabeth will be serving as our note taker, but at ITS America, Elizabeth serves as the Meetings and Education Manager, and she keeps our programs and events running smoothly, on time, with everyone in the room. So we honestly don't know what we would do without her. Again, she's going to be taking notes and helping to identify some of those key themes. So I see that we have a couple of, why don't we go around the room before before we start the presentation. I would love to hear from all the people in the room, just your name and where you're from, and maybe just, a mention or 2 of the topic. What brought you to room number 2? So I'm just going to go through the way I see everyone. So why don't I start with Annie? Hi, Annie.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Annie Key. I work at Lee Consulting. We're a civil engineering firm based in Toronto, Canada, and I am the HR director. So this topic is very relevant to me.
Welcome. Great to see you. Next, I see Beverly. Hi, Beverly.
Hello. Oh gosh, bad background. Beverly Kuhn. I work with Texas A&M Transportation Institute. I'm actually the ITE International President this year, and we are working to, at least I personally am working to diversify the team that I have, and interested in the whole concept of how do we make sure that the young women that we hire are willing to stay with us.
Welcome, Beverly. Next, we have Sharon.
Good afternoon. I'm Sharon Cuaney. I'm in Wichita, Kansas. I work for Gady Sales Company. We are a small regional traffic signal distributor, and we've had a little turnover here lately, and we're just looking to see what we can do to improve our retention.
Fantastic. I'm so glad that you're here. And hello, Lindsay. Great to see you.
Hi, everyone. A lot of familiar faces. My name is Lindsay Shelton Gross. I'm the Director of Public Relations and Strategic Initiatives for WTS International, and we are the association that promotes the advancement of women in the transportation industry. Janet is one of our fearless leaders. So thanks for having me on in this room. I can't wait to hear more.
Great to see you, Lindsay. And Carrie.
Hi, thanks. My name is Carrie Childress. I work for a company called Sanderson Stewart in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And I am working with the mentorship team for our company. I'm kind of have a vested interest because I worked in the transportation field for 10 years and then left for 13 to help raise my kids and move various places as a military spouse, and returned to the field a couple of years ago.
Great. Welcome, Carrie. Great to see you. Next, we have Audrey.
Hi, my name's Audrey. I also work for Sanderson Stewart. I live in Bozeman, Montana. We have a few offices in Montana and Colorado. And Carrie and I both actually were on a diversity, equity, inclusion, like task force sort of within our company. So we both kind of wanted to get some more research for that and see, what kind of ideas we can bring to the table.
Great. Well, welcome from Bozeman, Audrey. Great to have you. Next, I have Nathan.
Hey, good afternoon. Nathan Umberger with ATCS. We're a mid-sized engineering firm in the Mid-Atlantic. I lead our traffic and planning department. I'm very fortunate that I have a really good diverse mix of male and female staff, which I'm proud of, but I also wanted to kind of hear, I was very torn in terms of succession planning and retention. I guess retention is probably the first start, but I'm hoping to see many of my female engineers kind of be my boss one day. So just looking for great tips and how to manage that.
Wonderful. Well, so glad that you're able to join us, Nathan. Next, I have Pavani.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pavani. I work at Lee Consulting with Annie as a transportation analyst. This topic of retention policies is fairly new to me, so I wanted to join this breakout room to learn more. And also, I'm hoping to start learning more about this, just so I myself can set my own expectations of the kind of support I'd like from my company and from my teams.
Welcome, Pavani. It's great to have you. And then last, I see Greg. Hi, Greg.
Hello, my name is Greg Go, and I'm with Alliance Transportation Group here in Austin, Texas. And I'm just here to learn, since we've had our own share of retention challenges that I'm sure everybody else is familiar with. So I'm just here to learn on what we can do better.
Fantastic. Well, welcome, Greg. And wow, thank you all for taking a little bit of time to, let us know who you are, what you're interested in. And without further ado, I will hand this over to Janet. Janet, are you all set with your presentation? Oh,
yep. Can you see me, Morgan?
I can. Let me add one more thing. If you do have thoughts or comments, please drop those into the chat. And we'll make sure that those are cataloged throughout, and then we can get to Q&A and the conversation after Janet's finished. Sorry, Janet, I wanted to make sure I made that clear, but yes, I see you, and take it away.
Well, good afternoon again, everyone. Thank you for joining our work breakout 2. Hopefully you won't regret it. I'm so looking forward to our conversation and learning from you. And hopefully I'll share some information that's not, that is new or gives you a different perspective. I'm very appreciative of the 2 gentlemen that we have joining us, Nathan and Greg. That is so critical to this type of conversation period, is that understanding, particularly from you as our allies and advocates in the room. So thank you for being here. I'd like to also say that I just came back, Greg, from Austin, I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. I got in at 1 a.m. this morning, so I'm a little tired, but so excited about what's going on in that fabulous city in Austin from a transportation perspective and focus. And maybe we'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. And then lastly, to tie to Annie, I am an Army brat, and I so get the military life, and you being a military spouse. Thank you for your service, and your husband for his service as well. It brings a whole new meaning to retention and succession planning strategy when you're relocating frequently. So to get us off, I began to start us off, I began this discussion. Oh, and I'm so sorry, Morgan, thank you. So happy to be partnering with you. Thank you so much for that introduction. As I teased earlier on, the purpose of this discussion is really to get into some deliberate retention policies, and I should really say strategies, right? That we should be looking at, not when it's too late. Oftentimes we're coming from, from behind, behind the game, right? And trying to catch up with what might be some retention issues, and we get a bit surprised. So let's talk about some ways that we can be proactive. Now, I think based on the background that I've heard from all of you, you're very experienced HR, recruiting professionals, or business leaders in your own right. So we all know that that employees and how they feel in terms of being valued in the company is the starting point. And they need to feel that we are invested, the company's invested in their success. And as a result, they're happier, more productive, and loyal. And this becomes a win-win for everyone. So this is the starting point. Some other basics, deliberate retention needs to start with a strategy. It can't be because, and this is, and I don't know about all of you, but right now, you're hearing more and more, I'm seeing more and more in my respective workplace, the employees that have been approached aggressively about going over to a competitor or another company. And so then we're suddenly having a retention strategy discussion, and I'm having it candidly more often than not around how to either counteroffer, incentivize the employee through a multi-year retention strategy or bonuses, things of that nature. And though we're doing that, all of us are doing that, that also can lead to an equity issue amongst the colleague, the other folks in the organization. So you ended up looking at being reactive and looking at a strategy that ensures that while you're retaining an employee, that you do not create an inequity with the other employees. And particularly for women, we're seeing this come up when that happens. So you have to have a strategy around looking holistically. Now, this is, that struggle, if the struggle is real as it relates to being able to deal with these counteroffers, but we've got ways around that. So first of all, if we start with the whole idea, and I love this thought around belongingness, and that is, does the employee really feel welcome from the very first day or the first week that they start? What unique needs does the employee have that need to be considered during the onboarding and ongoing development or the care and feeding process? And those needs vary. They vary by gender, they vary by race, and they vary by age. And one of the challenges that we see with women in particular has to do with that strategy to ensure that when they are, particularly since women and minorities are typically in the smaller group of representation, it doesn't always have that natural cultural fit. And you have to go above and beyond to ensure that there is an integration of that employee. And you can't just say, hey, here's your computer, here's where you're at, now it's your virtual desk, and you're left alone. You really have to think about what the different strategies and needs are based on those factors. The other thing to consider are the virtual team and remote locations, which create, to me, I think, greater opportunities for work, but also when coming to a new company can be challenges for that inclusivity that we're talking about. Another element is career advancement. Is the employee aware of their career trajectory at the company? Is that conversation happening with the employee? And something as basic as this, is everyone consistently doing performance reviews and providing feedback throughout the year? That engagement with the employee is something that needs to happen consistently. And then the continuous opportunity for learning and professional development, ensuring that there is a budget in place and time is built in for the development of the employee. And this includes participating in associations and on committees, on boards, nonprofit work, all those things that will add to the professional development that are in work hours as well as outside of work hours. That should be seen as beneficial for the employee and for the company. And then lastly, financial. Women are compensated, are the women compensated, and I'll say minorities as well, fairly in your organization? And this gets back to having a continuous look at your compensation model. A strategy based on these building blocks will help with the retention across, again, all the demographics that we've discussed, gender, age, and race. But as we think about deliberate retention strategies for women, we need to add a couple of additional topics that should be considered. And that's because we begin with normalizing, that men are also parents and that men have household responsibilities. With women, even though there's been a lot of changes, gentlemen, the majority of the child care and household duties, even with women that are working full time, still tend to rest with women. We know that we lost, as we mentioned earlier in the opening, over 4 million women during the pandemic because of the need to stay at home to take care of children, of aging parents, or other demands. Flexible working environments, if we employ those, can that help us keep them in the workforce? And I think we've seen some of those results already, some of those positive results already, as we are returning to the office differently than the way that we left. The expectation that we're coming into the office 5 days a week, whether it be on the public or the private sector side, that has changed. Many models have 2 days a week, 3 days a week, or 100% remote. So that's a positive in terms of a retention strategy. The flexible work hours, that's critical. We're seeing, even from a transportation perspective, where folks are delaying when they go into the office, perhaps working from home from the first part of the morning, and childcare needs are taken care of and that sort of thing. If they need to go into the office, they're going in later, no longer having to go in as early as before. The non-traditional workday, this allows time, as I mentioned before, breaking up time in the day for that school pickup and that school drop off, or drop off and pick up, those breaks around dinner and bedtime. All of those things are critical strategies for retention. And then the hybrid work environment. We need to be thinking about all the different ways we all work and want to work, again, based on gender, based on our age and our home lifestyle. For too long, women have been expected to adapt to the culture of the company, of corporate America, of the agency. And now we need to be thinking about how the culture of the company can adapt to women, because women are leaving and finding other options, and they're choosing to stay at home, and those options do exist. So with the retention strategy, we have to be competitive in thinking about how to ensure that these type of flexible options exist. We need to also think about the types of retention strategies that are at all levels and not just for the executives, which I think for a long time has been how we've been perhaps slated, or maybe tilted more towards men and not really taking in the needs of the women that I've just mentioned before. But we've got to look at the entire workforce, not just, at the top levels, at the executive levels, but how do we create a fairness all the way across? I'd like to talk about, now that I've given some openings, some specific retention strategies, or delve into some of the things that I've just mentioned a few minutes ago. And there are 12 that I'd like to highlight before closing and opening up for the discussion. One is to invest in the employee's career. A few minutes ago, I talked about supporting employees' interest in being on boards, nonprofit boards and committees, and that sort of thing. But you have to also think about what their training needs are. According to LinkedIn, 94% of employees say they would stay with the company longer if it invested in their career development. So in today's economy, employees understand that they need to keep their skills sharp to remain competitive and to move up the ladder. So that's really important, because it's not just about the salary. We've got to look at all of the needs of the employee. Secondly, focus on managers. We've all heard the saying, people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses, right? That's an old saying. Well, I think it's still true. It's still very true. And a 2019 study found that 50% of employees that quit a job do so because of poor relationships with their manager. And as I think over the course of my career, I know there's at least one time in my career, many, many years ago, where that was indeed the case for me. And I don't know about all of you, but that management focus is critical to retention. How are things going in that organization? Manager, are they doing one-on-ones? Are they doing performance reviews? What is the leadership's role in ensuring that we've got the retention strategies in place. Employee recognition, that never gets old, but what we do is the creative ways in which we recognize employees. So you got to, one, recognize employees, and then two, be very creative about the ways of doing that. Everyone likes to feel valued at every level. And so in the workplace, we've got to make sure that we create a method of recognizing employees, not just once a year, but throughout the year, and encourage managers to recognize and highlight the direct reports work. Next is reassessing compensation. Mentioned that a bit earlier. We're so competitive in our environment today, and compensation becomes an essential piece of a company's retention strategy. No matter how valued an employee may feel, they're likely to look outside their current company if they feel inadequately compensated for their work, and women in particular. So we want to get ahead of that and make sure that we are providing the most competitive salaries, and not just salaries, right? Compensation package, which include a variety of different things, right? That's the work from home, that could be a gym membership, all of those things that go into the package. The other area related to the compensation package is your benefits package. And benefits are also a major factor in decision-making for employees staying and those leaving. Forbes did some really good reporting around this and found that 6 out of 10 employees, the company's benefits package itself was the most important and not salary factor when they consider when assessing a job. And so particularly, this is important, and I've seen, and you HR executives, you know this best, but I've seen where, particularly as we get to a more mature age workforce, right? That factor about retirement and, kind of building their nest egg, that overall packaging makes the stock and those kinds of benefits, retirement benefits, matter even more. Next is prioritizing that work-life balance. And listen, right now, the work-life balance, I don't even know if that exists between Zoom and Teams and all the virtual environments and work anywhere environment. It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? I mean, on one hand, we can work anywhere. And on the other hand, we're working anywhere and we're working all the time. So while remote work and flexible schedule policies are important factors in creating that balance, we've got to really think about how to ensure that we balance that, and that the employees aren't being asked to do more than they should. So the culture should be obviously where employees are checking emails, for example, on a routine basis, but there shouldn't be an expectation that they're checking them at 1 a.m. So we just have to use some common sense in that. The next one up is creating that pathway for growth. The world of work is changing so fast, and employees need to, as we mentioned before about upskilling, they need to make sure that they're competitive and not falling behind. This gives a sense of satisfaction. We don't want them worrying about lack of opportunities for promotion and upward mobilities. And so we've got to make sure that that pathway and those discussions, short-term, mid-term, longer-term, are in place so that they stay with the company, an important retention strategy. Looking at the organizational culture, this may seem subjective to most, but its impact on retention, or you can't deny that. And I mentioned it before in terms of belongingness and coming into a company, and how women and minorities oftentimes have different needs for being integrated in a company where, or in a culture where they may be the minority in the group, or the one or the first or the only. So those factors are really important. And as companies, we have to be proactive in ensuring that we're addressing those opportunities for inclusiveness. The company culture is one of the key drivers of workforce satisfaction, and the building blocks of a strong culture have to include things like having and carrying out clearly articulated values, valuing and seeking out employees' voices and their feedback, ensuring that there is not just a statement, but a strong commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and executing supportive leadership. We mentioned the hybrid option for how we work. So I'll just kind of mention that again, whether it's part-time or full-time in this instance, or somewhere in between. Focusing on flexibility as another option to ensure that remote options that I mentioned before exist, but also have flexible schedules with that. And so that we can accommodate, family caregiving in the middle of the day, the need to run to the pharmacy or to the bank or the dry cleaners, all of these things that can be controlled within the employee's environment. They should feel comfortable making these kind of decisions. Now, giving employees the tools that they need to succeed. Matt, the fact that IT is an issue or a challenge at every company, so it seems. Now, some of you may say it's, that it's fantastic, and I can say this as a recovering chief information officer. Having the adequate IT tools and systems in place is crucial to onboarding, but it's also crucial to, I think, retention strategies. Folks want to make sure that they've got the right tools, the right displays and monitors that make for a productive environment, particularly when we're working from home or we're in this virtual environment. So it's got to be comfortable. And then the last thing is just an overall understanding of the employee's well-being. And that's between the ongoing pandemic, and we're coming out of that, right? And political and economic uncertainties that we're going through. And this even goes back to George Floyd and the social unrest that we were experiencing in the last couple of years, and now to the economic uncertainties. It's no wonder that these worldwide feel burnt out. So those are, again, some specifics around the strategies. As I close and I think about what we're doing at WSP, I want to share that with you quickly, as well as that I have to talk about WTS, or Lindsay will get me. There are some specific things that we're also doing. At WSP, we are ensuring that our junior employees have an opportunity to move up to positions of leadership. Within the Transit Rail organization that I lead, we have a program called the Fireside Chat. It's with our emerging leaders, and they have an opportunity to hear each month from one of our leaders in the organization. It's not just Transit and Rail, one of our executive leaders in the company. And it's very much, it's just like the Fireside Chat says, it's an intimate sharing of a career trajectory of a leader with these group of individuals, lessons learned and all of that. I've actually participated in that. We have a gold program. It's called Growing Our Leadership Diversity. That's a competitive program that we do once a year. It targets women and employees of color that are underrepresented at WSP. And it is a funded program that's year-long, that is focusing on their career trajectory and ensuring that they move to the next level. And I love the program. Training is really important. We invest in training for employees. So I've mentioned that before. And then within my organization and within the company, we're looking very closely at the pipeline and building upon that. We're doing succession planning as we speak. We do that regularly, but being very methodical about the pipeline and the folks that are in the organization. I particularly focus on women in the organization, ensuring that I'm taking a look at them. We've got opportunities for promotion, as well as the recruiting strategy for all of my folks. We are looking at ensuring that we're looking at women and diverse hires. At WTS International, where I am thrilled to be the incoming WTS International chair in May, just in a few weeks, but I'm currently the vice chair of WTS International board and the chair of the foundation board. This is our bread and butter as it relates to our focus on women and the importance of building a network outside of the employment, to me, that goes hand in glove. For instance, WTS International advocates for workplace flexibility for women and caretakers. This includes the discussion we had I just shared with you a few minutes ago, flex hours to best accommodate schedules for children or for elder care, like school pickups. Building opportunities that allow for limited or creative travel and at-home workspace versus a mandated in-office workspace. We care about this, we advocate for this. As management, keeping an open mind about alternative career timelines. For instance, an employee working part-time when caretaking for infants, like we heard a few minutes ago, with the ability to return to a full-time role once that child reaches the school age and they still have a meaningful role at the company. Mentorship opportunities and sponsorship. Research shows that women often underestimate and underleverage their strengths. A female sponsor can advocate directly within a company for employee interview opportunities and promotions. Men can do that as well, right? Not only a female sponsor, but a male sponsor. That's why it's so important that we have our gentlemen with us today. This not only helps keep the employees in question, but sets a culture at an organization or company. If employees see advancement of peers that look like them, they will likely stick around and start to self-advocate. Company culture and educating all employees from entry level to C-suite. Expectation setting from day one of employment helps to reduce microaggressions and subtle forms of bias. And we could talk a whole nother time about the biases that are critical, but this is important. And then lastly, we've got some programming at WTS that also reinforces this, and that's local and grassroots networking and programs, and even at chapter levels that we reinforce these strategies. Our annual conference, which is just around the corner, shameless plug, it'll be in Seattle, right, Lindsay, in just a few weeks. And that occurs that's in North America, and it's annually. We'll be going back to our first in-person conference where we pull together women at every level as part of our annual leadership. There's signature leadership training for both mid-career and executive level transportation professionals. And then lastly, building interest and support through our foundation scholarships. Though the foundation is focused on that age group of 12 to 18 formally, I always say, gosh, let's start at age 3 or 5. If that 3, because I know 3 and 5-year-olds that know how to FaceTime you, how to swipe left, up and down, then I think it's not too early to start exposing them to careers in transportation. So with that, I thank you for your time and attention and look forward to engaging you in dialogue and hearing your perspectives. Morgan, back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Janet. Oh my goodness, what an amazing presentation and so much great information in there. I did just see in the chat, it looks like we had some people join mid presentation. So welcome. We're talking about deliberate retention practices that we can do in our companies to make sure women are retained in our companies and feel supported. So welcome. I don't know, all my names got mixed up, but if you're new to the group, you can pop your name in the chat and tell us where you're from and any interest that you have in women retention in your company. So let's get started with some questions and some topics. So do I have any volunteers? Any questions? There's got to be a few questions. Anyone? Hi, Annie, go ahead.
Hi. So our organization is small to mid-size, less than 200 people. And sometimes we can't compare to the WSPs with tens of thousands of people where there's formal, sponsorship, mentorship programs, these fireside chats. We have, not a lot of women in the executive ranks and in management. So how do we deal with something like that? We just are small and we just don't have a lot of resources.
Sometimes that's a benefit or blessing in disguise at the same time, right? I know in terms of what you're referring to in terms of the financial investment and sometimes the travel that's necessary to go to training and some board engagements. So I get that. I also get, even though it's a small company and there are not a lot of, let's say women in executive leadership or in senior leadership or minorities, I can share with you, Annie, that that's not too different from large companies. Get better, and I'm very proud of the progress we're making at WSP. But as I think about throughout my career, where I started as, I'm an IT techie by trade, I am so, even in 2022, used to being the first and the only. And so that is still happening with WTS. I will be the first Black chair. And I know that that's shocking. but I will not be the last. And that's kind of how I, refer that back to your company as we think about leadership and journeys. And so I think for those women leaders like you that are there, then you've got the responsibility for carrying the weight, but I know that you can. But I still think that fireside chat with a small company is still very important, right? And that's really not something that's an investment at all, but other than time and setting the structure in place. So that would be something that I could recommend. And it's just a facilitator like Morgan's doing with us today. And when I did it, it was me speaking about my career journey and challenges. And when it's smaller, like in your company, of course you don't want to overshare, right? Oh gosh, but you do want to talk about candidly what some of the barriers were along your career. Everybody's had them. And then you're really being positive and talking about, but ultimately, which is what I do when I talk about barriers, had it not been for that bad boss, had it not been for that bad experience, maybe I wouldn't be the leader that I am today. Because I can really speak to some of those challenges, right? So I think that for one is important. There are a number of local opportunities for engagement. WTS chapters are throughout the country. I'll use that as an example, and that's for men and for women. That would be a way of engaging and creating morale opportunities. It also, to me, builds upon leadership skills, and it's ITS America, whether it's WTS, whether it's COMTO, right, ITE. These are opportunities to engage and to, and oftentimes they even increase their public speaking skills and their relationship and networking skills through those. So I'd recommend you doing that. The other thing is, it relates to if there's and I'm kind of just mentioning a couple topics in terms of being competitive with salaries, Annie. Is that one of the things also that's challenging, or do you feel like that's something you have covered?
It's a little bit challenging, but it's not on the top of the list. I do really like I wrote some notes, the Fireside Chats. So the Fireside Chats, they, I guess, involve chatting with a senior leader from a diverse group, or?
It can be, and it's interesting because that you could mix it up a bit, right? And sure, you've got diversity and you've got your women that are out there speaking, but you can go to the CEO of the company. You could go to different leaders, whether they are regardless of color and regardless of gender, because although we still have the focus on women, but you really want to also create a more inclusive, because we're talking retention overall. And so you want to employ that along with those other strategies with focus on women. But you would invite folks that would be interesting, by the way, Annie. If you think that they're great, but they're kind of boring, because your program is all around motivation and inspiration. And so, but so you pick your speakers, with that in mind. The other thing is you can pick speakers from outside the company. So it's fine, right? And a lot of folks are willing to do that, and they won't charge for it. You want them to featured guest speaker at your fireside chat around their career, kind of what you could pick the topic, but mostly it's sharing with leadership their career journeys and perspectives. And you can find people that are in your particular industry or mode or outside, it doesn't matter, but you can switch it up. So once you've kind of gone through the company, you find, okay, we've exhausted everybody that we have, or even start with someone on the outside as an idea, and then go inside. But you can play with that a bit. That creates a lot of engagement. People participate, they ask questions, the aha moments, but that also gets back to, in terms of that strategy, where you've got another forum for people coming together, that it's just not one-way conversation. They're opening it up.
Yeah, so we did for our last 2 International Women's Day events, we did have like a speaker during lunchtime from outside the organization. Yes.
Okay. Very good. And so you go on the calendar year, you can say for 9 months or 12 months of the year, you have a speaker for each month. You can pre-select it. Sometimes people will do a presentation that says little funny things, talks about their family, talk about work-life balance, but you want them to make it fun. You don't want to hear a keynote speech that's boring. You want something that's authentic.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great question, Annie. Other questions from the group?
I've got a question.
Oh, Jocelyn. Hi there.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I was a part of the first breakout group, so unfortunately I did miss some of the beginning. So please don't mind me if I'm asking something that you already talked a little bit about before. Something that we've been noticing at my company is that, we do want to host events, whether they're socials, whether they're sort of professional development. And we do have people that are initially very interested in them, but a lot of times when we have turnout, the turnout's not that good because, some people say, I just have too much work to do, or they're feeling a lot of like screen fatigue and they just, don't want to sit at their computer at lunch to listen to a talk, or at the end of the day, they just want to turn off their computer. So do you have any advice on how we can sort of manage that burnout and workload while still having meaningful engagement?
Oh, and I didn't address that so much, but that's a great question. Well, but in part of it, I'll go back to Annie and say, think about, particularly when you're kicking off, you start with a bang, really strong speakers that are prepared and that they, can really engage the audience, right? So I would start with that, outside speakers as well. Might want to do some giveaways, whether it's company paraphernalia or whether it's gift cards or AirPods or whatever, that word gets out. So you want them to come and stay throughout. So, there's some fun things that you can do there. You can also do some icebreakers at the beginning to get people engaged, but overall, then the word gets out and people won't want to miss what a great session that it was. So I would utilize that. And it is hard. So I didn't recognize that, Jocelyn, that it is hard to get people to get back on screen. But if you do things like that, that helps. The other thing is think about when you want the speakers and you want it to be about leadership and inspirational, is there a way of adding to something else? I mean, we've done everything from having, and you have to do this after hours, but having a guest bartender in, and this sounds a lot, I don't know if many of you, we've done this with WTS and some other organizations, we've done it with ITS, but something that, even if it's only for 15 minutes, what would be something different that's creative that you can introduce to your leadership topic that gets folks involved and excited? And again, prizes and that sort of thing. I would certainly think about doing things like that. Does anybody else have ideas about getting back to Jocelyn's question, how to get folks to sign on while they're instead of giving up their lunch break?
Jocelyn, I think that is a great question. And Dean, I see you. And I just wanted to add a thought. I think working with management, sometimes working with management to say it's okay, and encouraging our managers. Janet did talk about workforce retention and how that really does, one key component is our managers. And so I don't know if it's engagement with your C-suite or some of your other higher level executives, but getting them to say, we encourage this, it's okay, take the time. And because I feel like sometimes, not that people need that permission, but sometimes that gives oh, okay, I can do this and it's okay to fit it into my day. So that could be one strategy for more internal sort of engagement to try and get people to join. Go ahead, Jean.
Well, just a couple things, and I really apologize to everyone who was in breakout room number 1 for technological difficulties. I just couldn't get back into Zoom. Something happened. So anyway, I knew there was a lot of overlap between what Janet was talking about and what I was going to talk about. So I joined this group, and I think a couple things back to Annie's question and to Jocelyn's. I think intention is really important here, that you want to make sure that you are planning ahead and being intentional about drawing people in and engaging. One of the things I did during the pandemic to engage my staff was I just had a 15-minute morning call with everybody. And we didn't actually discuss business or anything else. It was just a moment in the morning, 15 minutes. We really limit it to 15 minutes. And each person every day has a little share, and the share is supposed to be inspirational, and it can be whatever you want. We tried to stay away from politics and scary topics, but it's been now 2 years and we continue the practice, and we've gotten to know each other through these shares. We've learned a whole lot from each other, and it's been fun. And to Janet's point, it hasn't been about work. It hasn't been a burden. I find the engagement very, very strong. Everyone, because they know it's 15 minutes, just taps in. Who's sharing today? What are we going to listen to? It can be music, it can be videos, it can be, poems, recommendations for things they've read or watched. We've run the whole gamut. And it's been super interesting and a great way to engage people and to encourage people to get to know one another a little bit outside the office.
Well, that's fantastic. Fantastic. I got a couple, Jean, you made me think about a couple more things related to Jocelyn getting people to show up for these virtuals while we're still doing that. I've even had clients participate. You know, I talked about people outside. But if a client is coming and they're speaking about their perspective, right, and people in the company are interested in not just, you know, the client organization itself, but also, is that telling us that we need to leave?
Oh goodness, we've got a minute, 50 seconds left. So
okay, well, I'll stop. To see if there's another question before we finish. But you see where I'm going, Jocelyn, right? Okay.
Yes, amazing. Thank you all so much for your answers.